The old train station was nearly deserted, save for a few stray passengers waiting for the last train of the night. Among them was Rhea, a university student heading home for the holidays. She glanced at the timetable nervously. The train was running late. The air was thick with a dense fog that had rolled in from the nearby river, wrapping the station in an eerie silence. Finally, the train pulled into the station with a groan of metal on metal. It was an ancient model, likely from a time before Rhea was born. She had taken this train many times before, but tonight, something felt different. The carriages, usually full of passengers, were sparsely occupied. Rhea shrugged off the unease that crept over her and boarded the train, finding an empty seat in the middle carriage. As the train lurched forward, Rhea pulled out a book to pass the time. But her concentration wavered as she noticed something peculiar. Every time the train passed through a tunnel or a particularly dark stretch of track, a faint, low hum reverberated through the carriage. It was not the sound of the train's engine or the rattling of the tracks, but something else, something almost organic. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks in the dim light. But as the train continued its journey, the hum grew louder, more insistent, as if it were calling to her. Unable to focus on her book, Rhea decided to explore the train. Maybe walking around would help her clear her head. She moved from carriage to carriage, each one emptier than the last. The few passengers she encountered seemed distant, their faces obscured by the shadows or buried in their own concerns. There was a strange stillness in the air, as if time had slowed down. Finally, Rhea reached the last carriage. It was older than the others, with peeling paint and a door that creaked loudly when she opened it. Stepping inside, she was struck by the musty smell of old wood and rusting metal. The seats were covered in a thick layer of dust, and the windows were so grimy that they barely let in any light. But what caught her attention most was the large, heavy door at the far end of the carriage. A door that didn't belong in a regular passenger train. It was a solid iron door with a small round window at the top, barred like a prison cell. Rhea's heart raced as she approached it, drawn by a mixture of curiosity and dread. The hum she had heard earlier was louder now, almost like a chant, resonating from beyond the door. She hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the latch. A part of her knew she should turn back, return to her seat, and forget about this strange carriage. But something stronger, a deep primal urge, compelled her to open the door. The door creaked open with a sound that echoed through the empty carriage. Beyond it was a short, narrow corridor, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The hum was louder here, a rhythmic thrum that seemed to pulse with the beating of her heart. She stepped into the corridor, the door slamming shut behind her with a finality that made her jump. At the end of the corridor was another door, this one wooden and worn, with a brass handle polished smooth by countless hands. Rhea reached out and turned the handle, pushing the door open. The room beyond was not what she expected. It was a small, cramped space, more like a storage room than anything else. The walls were lined with shelves stacked high with old, dusty books and forgotten artifacts. In the center of the room stood a large, ornate mirror, its surface covered in a thin layer of dust. But what really caught Rhea's eye was the figure standing in front of the mirror. It was a young girl, no older than 10, with long dark hair and a pale complexion. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, the kind that children might have worn a century ago. The girl was staring into the mirror, her expression blank, her eyes hollow. Rhea felt a chill run down her spine. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. The girl didn't respond. She didn't even move. Rhea stepped closer, her curiosity getting the better of her fear. As she approached the girl, she noticed that the mirror wasn't reflecting her own image. Instead, it showed a different scene entirely, a dark, endless void filled with swirling shadows. "Are you lost?" Rhea asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The girl finally turned to face her, and Rhea's breath caught in her throat. The girl's eyes were empty, black voids that seemed to suck in all the light around them. her mouth twisted into a haunting smile, revealing sharp, jagged teeth. "You shouldn't be here," the girl whispered, her voice echoing unnaturally. "This is my place, my domain." Rhea stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned to run, but the door she had entered through was gone. The room seemed to be shrinking, the walls closing in around her. The girl stepped closer, her smile widening. "You've seen too much. Now you must stay." Rhea's mind raced as she searched for a way out. She spotted a small rusted key on one of the shelves and grabbed it, hoping it would unlock something. Anything that could save her. She turned back to the mirror, the only object in the room that seemed to hold any significance. Without thinking, she pressed the key against the mirror's surface. To her surprise, the key sank into the glass as if it were water. The mirror began to ripple, distorting the image of the dark void. The girl let out an ear-piercing scream, her face contorting in rage. "No, you can't leave. This is my world." Ignoring the girl's shrieks, Rhea twisted the key, and the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. The room was plunged into darkness, and Rhea felt herself falling, as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. When she opened her eyes, she was back on the train, lying on the floor of the last carriage. The hum was gone, replaced by the familiar sounds of the train's engine and the rhythmic clatter of the tracks. Dazed and disoriented, Rhea slowly got to her feet. The door to the strange corridor was gone, replaced by a solid wall. It was as if the hidden room had never existed. She hurried back to her seat, her heart still racing. The train's interior was as she had left it, with the few remaining passengers dozing or staring out the windows. But something had changed, something subtle, almost imperceptible. As the train pulled into her station, Rhea grabbed her bag and rushed to the exit. She needed to get off this train, to leave behind whatever had just happened. But as she stepped onto the platform, and the train began to pull away, she glanced back at the last carriage. For a brief moment, she saw the girl standing at the window, her hollow eyes fixed on Rhea. Then, with a blink, she was gone, and the train disappeared into the night, leaving Rhea with a lingering sense of dread. Rhea exhaled, trying to shake off the encounter as a bad dream. She walked quickly through the fog, eager to get home and put the night behind her. But when she reached into her bag to pull out her phone, her hand brushed against something cold. Frowning, she pulled it out and gasped. It was the rusted key from the mirror room. Her heart skipped a beat. How was it possible? Suddenly, she felt a chill run down her spine. Slowly, she turned her head and caught a glimpse of a small reflection in a nearby puddle. It was the girl, standing right behind her, smiling with those same hollow eyes and jagged teeth. "You'll never leave," the girl whispered in Rhea's ear. Rhea dropped the key, her scream swallowed by the fog, as the darkness closed in around her.